It all starts when a mysterious treasure map appears in the world. This map revealed the location of the martial arts of Chiangkija, the greatest genius in history, which were hidden on Hyongsan Mountain. Along with the techniques, a secret weapon he left behind was also there. Because of this, the martial world, which had been peaceful for a long time, was about to be thrown into chaos once again. A gigantic mountain is unexpectedly sliced in half, and after that powerful slash, it begins to split right down the middle. Then, a massive cloud of dust kicks up, and after the dust settles, the person who had made the cut starts to emerge from the cave that was inside the mountain, carrying what looks like a pretty worn-out sword. Relieved, he says that he finally made it out, and after seeing the outside world for the first time in a long while, he's stunned by how blue the sky is. He then wonders if this feeling is just because he got out of the cave, and realizes he can't remember anything before going in there. Even with his mind all jumbled, he decides he needs to remember as much as he can. The reason for this is that he has to get his revenge, no matter what it takes. His first memory comes from when he was about 10 years old and ran into an old man named Chiangkija. This master was speaking to a huge group of children and said that in 10 years they would have to save the world. At that moment, Chiangkija had gathered 100 children, and our protagonist was one of them. The young man still remembers the man's cold eyes as he ordered everyone to follow his words. With that, Chiangkija announced that their martial arts training would begin the next day and sent everyone off to rest. Back then, the boy felt no fear at all, maybe because he was an orphan with nothing to lose. The master then gave a warning to anyone thinking about escaping the place. With a sinister smile, he revealed he had sealed the cave entrance with a cliffside so that no one could get in or out. From that day on, a hellish training began, where everything from eating to sleeping was controlled. The first technique everyone learned was the three powers breathing, which absorbed energy from the heavens and the earth. After that came the sword technique and footwork, both based on the three powers, even teaching them how to walk. 3 years went by, and Chiangkija gathered them again, claiming that the arts he taught could reach the level of a god of war. Because of this, he ordered them to completely master these techniques in the remaining 7 years. Chiangkija points to a door on the wall and orders everyone to enter without exception, as they need to train to prevent a global catastrophe. He adds that from that point on, their training would be unstructured. Following the master's order, the students start walking toward the door. At that moment, our protagonist stares at the door with a determined look. The young man then understands that the reason they survived that infernal place is becoming clear. All the while, Chiangkija watches everything with a very suspicious smile on his face. The protagonist realizes that this whole situation was caused by his own master. They continued their training inside the cave, where the mist was actually condensed energy that improved their martial arts. However, the energy became so excessive that it started to distort space itself, leaving some students confused. Suddenly, demonic skull-faced creatures emerge from the distortion, startling everyone. The skeletal monsters keep appearing in large numbers, ready to attack. Right after, a giant skeletal snake appears and sends the students running for their lives. On that very day, the gates of Heck flew open with the arrival of that colossal creature. Facing the danger, our protagonist shouts for everyone to draw their swords, and without wasting a moment, he charges at the monsters, delivering a powerful slash with his sword. Every day of that training was a total nightmare, with the students pushing their bodies to the absolute limit. Amidst frantic combat, the fight for survival was constant and brutal. The battle against those creatures became a savage contest to see who would live to see another day. Because of this, the martial arts Chiangkija taught them improved drastically compared to training in the mist. However, in the end, amidst the remains of the monsters, only our protagonist was left standing, as no one else survived. He remembers the last words of his companion, Hyang Woo, who asked him to survive. This memory makes him recall how people used to call him Dan Hyang Woo. Now in the present, Dan Hyang Woo walks through a bustling city, observing the new environment. His walk leads him to a large establishment known as the Choyan Pavilion. Inside, the place is a restaurant filled with people chatting and having a good time. Our protagonist enters the place with a calm expression, taking in his surroundings. Inside, a young woman named Jo Seol, Yan, daughter of the head of the Hanam Jo family, is also present. Her eyes lock onto Dan Hyang Woo as soon as he enters the pavilion. An older man accompanying her approaches the young man and comments on him carrying an unsheathed sword. Dan Hyang Woo's sword is shown in detail, revealing its battle scars and lack of protection. Then, another young man named Jo In, who is the son of the head of the Hanam Jo family, compliments Dan Hyang Woo's impressive sword. At that moment, a steaming bowl of noodles is placed on our protagonist's table. He stares at the food and wonders how long it's been since he had a real meal. Without hesitation, the young man grabs the utensils and brings the noodles to his mouth. The food is so delicious he feels like it's melting in his mouth. The dish's popularity is clear, as other customers in the place are also ordering another bowl. Meanwhile, the young Jo Seol, Yaon, can't take her eyes off Dan Hyung Woo and wonders why. She continues to watch him, trying to understand why she feels so drawn to this man. After finishing the dish, the protagonist says it was delicious, and the waiter asks if he enjoyed the meal. The restaurant employee stands there, staring at the customer with an expression expectant look. With that, the waiter says the bill comes to 5 pun, but our protagonist has no idea what he's talking about. It then finally clicks that the man is talking about money. Dan Hyung Woo realizes that after all that time, he had completely forgotten how things worked. The young man now understands that payment for services is made with money. With a nervous smile, the employee warns that this is a problem, because those who eat have to pay the bill. As cool as a cucumber, Dan Hyung Woo replies that he doesn't have a single penny. The waiter gets annoyed with the man's audacity and, as an alternative, demands his sword as payment. Our protagonist then looks at him seriously and says he can't hand it over. He explains the sword was traded for the life of his last friend, so it has immense sentimental value. The employee explodes with anger and accuses the man of planning to dine and dash from the very beginning. Because of the shouting, the commotion draws the attention of the other customers, who get up and surround the table. Faced with the situation, an old man accompanying the Jo family despairs and calls out for Yan. Right after Jo Seol, Yan appears, asking them not to fight with him while holding a pouch of money. With a gentle smile, the young woman offers to pay for Dan Hyung Woo's meal. The waiter is completely floored by her gesture and addresses her as Miss. From there, the two just stare at each other in silence, with the employee in the background completely lost. Our protagonist wonders why that girl decided to pay for him and feels like he needs to say something. Looking closer, he notices her eyes and compares them to those of a child seeing the world for the first time. Even with all this on his mind, the young man can't find the right words and remains quiet. The waiter scratches his head, even more confused by the scene, while Dan Hyung Woo just stares into space. The young woman stands there, thinking she had something to say but can't remember what it was. But without giving anyone time to react, our protagonist simply turns his back and walks away, leaving the men baffled. Jo Seol Yan is surprised by his action and doesn't understand why he just left. The waiter is outraged by the man's lack of manners, who didn't even thank her for the help. Jo calls him an ungrateful wanderer, while the young woman just comments that he really didn't have any money. On top of that, the young man notices that Dan Hyung Woo doesn't seem to have any internal energy. Despite everything, Jo Seol Yan can't stop thinking about how incredible his sword was. At that moment, she gets an idea upon remembering an important detail. The young woman realizes that sword was a masterpiece, but walking around without a sheath could cause him a lot of trouble. Because of this, she decides she needs to follow him, as he will definitely need a sheath for that blade. Meanwhile, outside, our protagonist reflects on what happened and remembers that the young woman paid for his meal. With a faint smile, he realizes he should have at least thanked her for her kindness. Back at the Choyan Pavilion, the atmosphere starts to change completely. Inside the establishment, a group of men with suspicious auras are gathered. One of them comments on how the power of the Miram Alliance is truly impressive. Jo Seol Yan observes as someone remarks that the city of Changsha is full of warriors from the Miram Alliance. Jo In agrees and finds it incredible that the Alliance leader himself has made a move personally. Samao Chiel explains that the reason is that the Evil Way Alliance and the Green Forest Bandits are heading for Hyongsan Mountain. He adds that this is part of the reason, but most people are there because of one person's reputation. That person is none other than Chiang Kija, the greatest genius in the history of martial arts. They say he had an extraordinary perception and mastered powerful martial arts capable of reading the very energy of the heavens. When Chiang Kija was in his final years, he did something grand. The master created a martial art called the Lightning Shadow Blade that shook the entire world. Using his unique method, he passed his arts onto some random wanderer and turned him into an absolute master in just 3 years. Of course, that warrior ended up being branded a public enemy and met a tragic end, but the incident only boosted Chiang Kija's fame, who disappeared shortly after. Sama Chiel finishes by saying that now that the head of the Jo family has found the treasure map, it's natural for the entire martial world to be after him. Despite being there at the request of the Jo family head, the young man warns his sister that they still need to be extremely careful. Meanwhile, Jo Seol Yan thinks that in this world, completely unexpected things can sometimes happen. Jo incenses her intentions and says he's against her idea of following that wanderer now. He argues that the man has nothing to do with her and is someone with no manners, so her kindness would just be wasted. Jo Seol Yan looks sad but seems like she's about to give in to the pressure. Sama Chiel then agrees with Jo In, saying it's too dangerous to be wandering around now, plus the alliance leader is about to arrive. With her head down, the young woman remains silent, looking quite disappointed with their decision. With that, she says she has no choice and will follow her brother's wish, while our protagonist continues his walk through the bustling city. Along the way, he observes two men haggling at a stall, where one of them asks for a small discount. Further ahead, a musician plays a flute for a happy family, who joyfully applauds the performance. The protagonist watches the scene and thinks about how peaceful it all seems. His attention turns to a mother and her son at another stall, interacting with the cheerful vendor. The little boy thanks his mother with a big smile after receiving a gift from her. Dan Hyung Woo looks up at the sky with a melancholic expression, as if remembering something important. A memory comes to his mind where his friend Hyung Woo says they need to get out out of there to do everything they couldn't. Right after, Wu asks him to promise one more thing, leaving the protagonist curious about the request. The friend then asks that if he gets out, he should visit his home and tell his father about him. Wu, with a serious look, tells his friend to get out of there and do it himself. Wu lets out a laugh and agrees with a smile that he'll do it himself when they get out. Our protagonist then asks with a determined look for his friend Wu not to perish. With that, Wu agrees, and the two charge into battle, determined to survive another day of training. Just like that, in the blink of an eye, the situation changes drastically when a monster appears out of nowhere. Our protagonist senses the imminent danger and desperately yells to warn his friend, but it's too late, and a tear streams down his face as he watches the scene unfold. Wu sacrifices himself, jumping in front of the attack to save Wu's life. Desperate, our protagonist doesn't understand the reason for the sacrifice and asks why his friend took his place. With tears in his eyes, he tries to get his friend to stand up, reminding him of the promise about finding his father. In his final moments, Wu says that Wu was the strongest and asks him to survive to tell his father what happened. He finishes his request for Wu to apologize on his behalf, and the protagonist reflects on the lives of all his friends. Under the moonlight, he remembers that his freedom was won with the sacrifice of 99 lives. The protagonist then realizes he also owes a debt to all his fallen comrades. Facing the moon, he makes a promise that he will collect this debt directly from Chiankija. Without even realizing where he was going, his feet simply stop in front of a familiar place. Wandering aimlessly and lost in thought, he ends up back at the same place as before. Upon returning to the pavilion, the young man is slightly surprised. Through a crack in the door, he sees the young woman and remembers he never even got to thank her for her help earlier. Our protagonist then decides that his next destination will be Hyangsan Mountain, and that he will warn everyone about something. At the same time, a group of warriors in blue robes prepares to leave with determined looks. Their leader states that if they travel non-stop, they can reach their destination in just one day. With a shout of confirmation, the entire squad dashes through the city at high speed. From a distance, Wu watches the group's movement under the moonlight. He also notices that the young Joseul, Yayan, is leaving the pavilion in a hurry. The protagonist realizes she's also going somewhere and wonders about their destination. Without a second thought, he starts leaping across the rooftops to find out where everyone is going. The starry night serves as a backdrop for the mysterious movement in the city. The group of warriors takes a break to rest at the entrance of Hyangsan Mountain. Hidden, Wu observes and wonders if they could be heading to the place he came from. He also notices there's another group following behind and wonders what they are all looking for there. Meanwhile, two warriors chat, concerned about the movements of the Evil Way Alliance and the Green Forest, who are rushing towards an objective opposite to theirs. Juge Junction, the strategist of the Miram Alliance, tries to calm his leader, telling him not to worry too much about the situation. The Alliance leader, Dokoan, responds with a serious expression that maybe his instincts are failing him this time. Meanwhile, Joseul, Yan seems a bit tired from the journey and lets out an exhausted sigh. Noticing this, the vice leader, Peng Chiel, Yang, offers to speak with the Alliance leader so she can get some rest, but Joan intervenes and tells him to leave her alone, as she can handle it herself, making the young woman uncomfortable. Suddenly, a group of muscular, unfriendly-looking men emerges from the shadows. Finding who they were looking for, their leader gives a wicked grin and says he's finally found the Miram Alliance. This brute is Siohyo, Jui, a leader of the Green Forest, who taunts them for hiding so well. Facing the threat, Dokoan immediately orders everyone to prepare for the impending battle. One of his men warns him to be careful, as it seems the Evil Way Alliance has also joined them. The Alliance leader recognizes the danger and understands that Siohyo, Gui, is not an easy opponent to deal with. With a war cry, Siohyo, Gui asks if they should give those fools a taste of blood and charges into the attack. With that, he rushes forward with full force and lands a powerful blow on one of the Alliance warriors. The combat intensifies with Siohyo, Gui's men enjoying the carnage. Another one of the bandits lands a devastating kick on an Alliance member, showcasing the brutality of the fight. The battle is brutal, and the Alliance warriors are caught off guard, suffering fatal attacks from their enemies. At that moment, someone arrives on the battlefield, stepping firmly on the ground, ready to join the fray. Siohyo, Gui smiles, satisfied with the result, and says that the small fry have been eliminated. One of the remaining Alliance members retaliates with a powerful sword strike against one of the bandits. The bandit leader then yells Dokoan's name with an insane smile, ready for a direct confrontation. With that, the two leaders meet in the middle of the battlefield and begin an intense duel. Their blades clash with tremendous force, creating a spark on impact. Meanwhile, the fight continues chaotically, with the bandits slaughtering the Alliance warriors without any mercy. Dokoan realizes the situation is getting complicated and laments that they are outnumbered. Siohyo, Gui takes the opportunity to taunt him, saying the Alliance leader seems overwhelmed and that Chiankija's secret weapon will be theirs. Upon hearing Chiankija's name, our protagonist, who is watching from a distance, gets a serious expression. Without a second thought, he draws his sword and prepares to jump into the mess. To start things off, the young man uses his sword to easily slice a massive rock in half. Right after, he leaps and hurls the pieces of the rock towards the bandits, surprising Dako-on. With a powerful aura, the protagonist soars through the air, sword in hand, as the boulders rain down on the battlefield. The boulders hit the bandits with full force, and one of them is crushed by the impact with no chance to react. From there, our protagonist lands in the middle of the chaos he created as the bodies of his enemies fly through the air. His landing causes a powerful shockwave that sweeps away the remaining bandits and cracks the ground around him. With a freezing glare, the young man faces the survivors of the Miram Alliance, who watch him in complete shock. Dakwon and Jo Seol Yeon are left with their jaws on the floor, unable to comprehend the sudden arrival and absurd power of this man. At the same time, Jo In and the other young warriors also can't believe what they just witnessed. Without even caring about the confusion, Dan Hyung Woo gets straight to the point and asks where Cheonkija is. Faced with the situation, Dakwon tenses up and wonders how this guy appeared out of nowhere, as even he didn't sense his presence. Sama Chil thanks him for the help but finds the question very strange and begins to explain that Cheonkija actually already. Right after, he reveals that the master passed away 10 years ago, news that leaves our protagonist in a state of shock. Dan Hyung Woo is left speechless and questions out loud if Cheonkija is really gone. His mind flashes back to the past, remembering that he still hasn't had the chance to collect the debt for his friends' lives. The news blinds him with rage, and a green aura begins to emanate from him as he processes the unbelievable information. Because of this, the energy expands with absurd force, frightening the Alliance warriors, who feel the intense pressure in the air. One of the Alliance members can barely stay on his feet and complains about the crushing pressure the Wanderer is releasing. Without even realizing it, the void energy begins to flow from Dan Hyung Woo's body with terrifying intensity. Because of this, the powerful energy hits all the surrounding Miram Alliance warriors, throwing them into an instantaneous state of loss and helplessness. The young man reflects that he endured that hellish time and barely managed to escape, but now the target of his revenge has simply vanished. A memory of his fallen comrades surfaces, asking him to tell their families what happened to them. Another memory shows his friends begging him to avenge their unjust ends. Faced with the situation, Samochil manages to identify that energy as void energy and is terrified by its power. Dakwon worries that if the situation continues, the entire alliance could suffer a Kai deviation and decides he needs to stop the man as quickly as possible. Suddenly, Jo Seol Yeon approaches the protagonist and asks with a concerned voice if he's okay. Dan Hyung Woo looks at the young woman and remembers that he followed her there because of the kindness she showed him earlier. He also recalls the kindness of his friends like Hyung Woo, who sacrificed himself so he could survive. Our protagonist understands that now that Cheonkija is gone and he can no longer get his revenge, there's something else that needs to be done. With that, he decides that his new mission is to find his friends' families to fulfill the promise he made. In that same instant, the aura vanishes and the Alliance warriors are left confused, noticing that the feeling of helplessness has completely disappeared. Dakwon is shocked by the young man's control, as even skilled masters would have trouble escaping void energy, and wonders about his true identity. The protagonist just looks at the young woman and murmurs a simple still processing everything that happened. Our protagonist remains silent, just staring at the young woman who approached him. Jo Seol Yeon then asks if he's looking for someone. Next, the young woman turns to Sama Chil and reminds him that this man helped them. With a hopeful look, she suggests that he could travel with the group until he finds who he's looking for. Sama Chil becomes thoughtful at the young woman's request and seems to consider the idea. He admits it's hard to refuse someone who helped them but worries about the Alliance leader's reaction, since the warriors were almost caught by the void energy. Dakwon also ponders the situation with a very serious expression. The Alliance leader recognizes that this young man is dangerous, as he defeated the enemies with a single blow. Because of this, he concludes that it would be better to keep him close, now that they've lost so many men in the battle. With that, Dakwon makes his decision and says he approves of the young woman's idea. With the leader's approval, the group falls silent while Dan Hyung Woo stares at the two men in front of him. Sama Chil then takes the opportunity and asks if the young man would like to work at an escort agency. The offer surprises the other members, who comment on how the Hanam agency is super restrictive and that the proposal is impressive. Our protagonist, however, seems unsure and expresses his doubt with a hesitant look. Jo-in is outraged by the hesitation and questions if he's really refusing the offer, since the Hanam agency isn't a place for just anyone. As cool as a cucumber, Dan Hyung Woo replies that he'd like to answer, but he has no idea what an escort agency is. The response leaves the trio completely shocked, but Jo Seol Yeon pulls herself together with a smile and offers to explain everything to him. While the young woman explains what an escort agency is, Samao Chil watches the scene with a worried expression, questioning if this was really the right choice. At the same time, two Alliance warriors mock the protagonist, wondering where that country bumpkin appeared from. However, one of them draws draws attention to the young man's sword and asks his companion, Peng, if he also felt something special coming from it. Dan Hyangwoo's blade emanates a sharp and powerful aura, making it clear that this item is anything but ordinary. The warrior then comments on what a waste it is for a masterpiece like that to be on a country bumpkin's hip and says the sword needs a worthy owner. With a greedy smile, he decides they will try to take the sword when the alliance leaders enter Hyangsan Mountain, as there are too many witnesses around now. Right after, the sun rises over the horizon, illuminating the mountains and marking the beginning of a new day for the group. After a long walk, they finally reach their destination, the imposing Hyangsan Mountain. Sama Chiel observes the rock formation and comments on how the place looks sinister, leaving the other warriors apprehensive. Amidst the group, our protagonist also stares at the mountain with a serious and focused expression. He then realizes that this was the place everyone had been looking for from the beginning. Dako-un gets excited at the possibility of finally seeing Chiankija's secret manual but is soon frustrated when he realizes they can't find the cave entrance. Because of this, the Alliance warriors begin to desperately climb the mountain, shouting that the entrance is nowhere to be seen. Someone suggests they can't wait any longer and need to break the mountain, but Sama Chiel worries that this might damage Chiankija's secret manual. Our protagonist gives a slight smile, as he has the solution to the problem. The young man knows that the place he came from has already collapsed, so he needs to find Chiankija's entrance, a place where he can feel the master's energy. Following the energy, he finds a crevice in the rocks with a purple aura and confirms that this is the spot. Without wasting a second, Dan Hyam-woo dashes ahead of everyone, leaving the warriors behind. With impressive agility, he starts leaping across the rocks, surprising everyone with his movements. Right after, the man lands on a rocky platform, having reached his destination. From up there, he turns to the group and states that the entrance is right there. Dako-un and Sama Chiel are completely shocked, and the alliance leader asks if he knows the way around this place. With a serious look, our protagonist reveals that he does, because this was where he used to live. Jo Seol-yan is surprised by the revelation, while one of the warriors comments that it was exactly what he thought. The two warriors then mock him, saying he's nothing more than a wild beast who lived in the mountains, which is why he walks around with an unsheathed sword. Dako-un ignores the comments and starts giving orders for the search, saying that the Black Tortoise unit will secure the perimeter. The warriors respond in unison, confirming they understood the order. Meanwhile, Sama Chiel approaches Dan Hyang-woo and thanks him for his help, saying he's getting more and more in his debt. The young man then warns him that there's nothing inside, with an empty look in his eyes. But he adds that the only thing that exists in that place are memories of loss. A red aura begins to emanate from him as he remembers all the suffering. Because of this, the cave entrance fills with a dark and sinister energy. Dako-un notices the change in the young man and comments on how he seems anxious, asking him to leave the rest to them and not get involved any further. With the leader's order, the Alliance warriors advance into the cave while our protagonist just watches everything in silence. The young man thinks that since Chiankija is gone, what happens here is no longer his business. At that moment, Jo Seol-yan approaches him with slow steps. The young woman that asks if he really lived in that place for so long. Dan Hyang-woo just confirms with a slight nod, without saying a word. Suddenly, the two warriors from before grab the young woman and pull her away from the young man. Our protagonist's face immediately darkens, and he glares at the men with a furious look. Jo Seol-yan is outraged and asks what they are doing, but one of the men says there's no guarantee he isn't a spy. The other warrior adds that he might have saved the group as part of a plan. With a malicious smile, the man suggests that if the wanderer, the warrior observes the sword up close and notes that it looks even more incredible now. He comments that at first glance, the blade looks old and worn, but the sharp aura it emanates is something he has never seen before. With that, the protagonist places his hand on the hilt of the sword and asks with a mocking tone if they really want him to hand it over. The man gives a smug smile and says that since the young man understands the situation, he should just hand over the blade at once. Our protagonist then reveals that the sword was a gift from a friend who passed away, leaving Jo Seol-yan with a very worried expression. With that, he makes it clear that he doesn't intend to give the sword to anyone as long as he's alive, and a dark aura begins to surround him. But the warrior isn't intimidated and breaks into an even bigger smile, as if enjoying the provocation. Faced with the situation, the young woman remains silent, just watching the scene with a fearful and worried expression. Without wasting time, the two men begin to position themselves for combat, preparing to attack the protagonist. The wanderer notices their movement and narrows his eyes, analyzing his opponent's strategy. He understands that one of them will go behind to block his escape, while the other advances to pressure him from the front. From there, the young man concludes that their plan is to attack from both sides at the same time and starts thinking about how he will defend himself. His defense strategy begins with him ducking to dodge the two men's initial attack. Right after, he spins and delivers a powerful upward slash, aiming to hit both enemies at once. The speed of the movement surprises the two warriors, members, who are completely shocked by the Wanderer's unexpected reaction. With that, the Wanderer's strike is so fast that both men are thrown back without even understanding what happened. The impact is so strong that they are hurled far down the mountainside. Even in mid-air, one of the men still has the audacity to shout that if he hands over the sword, he'll avoid a nasty beating. Our protagonist just grips the hilt of his sword even tighter, ready for whatever comes next. His eyes glow with an intense purple energy, showing he's not messing around. But suddenly, Dakoan emerges from the cave and yells at them to stop immediately, asking what they think they're doing when they should be securing the perimeter. The two warriors are completely terrified by the Alliance leader's appearance and stop their attack at once. Right after Dakoan and the other group members exit the cave with very serious expressions, Sama Chil then asks the leader if he managed to find what he was looking for inside. The news spreads and the other warriors are shocked, wondering if they found Chiankija's secret weapon. With that, Dakoan announces that their work there is done and orders everyone to withdraw immediately. The warriors confirm the order in unison and begin to descend the mountain hastily. Before leaving, one of the men glares at protagonist angrily and tells him to consider himself a lucky guy. From there, Jo Seol-yen approaches the young man and asks with concern if he's okay. Dan Hyung-woo just replies that he's not sure what she means by being okay and turns his head to the side. The young woman is relieved and says she was worried about him. With a smile, she realizes they don't even know each other's names and introduces herself as Jo Seol-yan. Our protagonist then turns and reveals that his name is Dan Hyung-woo. Jo Seol-yan repeats his name and comments on how beautiful it is. Right after, the young man pulls away and says they need to go, as they also have to prepare to head back. With that, the Miram Alliance's journey to find Chiankija's secret weapon finally comes to an end. The scene then cuts to the bustling region of Hubei in Wuhan. There, two men talk about how the Miram Alliance found this secret weapon and that it's only a matter of time before they dominate the world. Elsewhere, a group debates what this weapon could be, but no one knows the answer, as the Alliance is keeping everything under wraps. Because of this, endless rumors about the Miram Alliance begin to spread like wildfire through the organization's headquarters. Inside, Dakoan slams his fist on the table in anger and lets out a cry of frustration. He complains that even though he says there's no secret weapon, no one believes them. Faced with the situation, one of the Alliance elders questions him and warns that the rumors have already spread throughout Hubei. The Alliance leader gets a serious expression and remembers that the only things inside the cave were very different from what everyone imagined. From there, he places a wooden box on the table and says he only found that and some letters left by Chiankija. A memory shows Dakoan and Samachil inside the dark cave, finding the wooden box. Along with the box, there was also a letter left by the old master. Back at the meeting, one of the elders holds the letter and wonders about the meaning of the writing. The term that confuses him the most is Blood Demon Child. The letter explains that a person from the current generation, called the Blood Demon Child, is trying to throw the martial world into chaos. Because of this, Chiankija reveals he has trained 100 peerless masters to stop this threat. He also explains that to control these 100 warriors, it would be necessary to use the yin-yang drum, which is inside the box. With a serious expression, the old man states that things will never go as the Blood Demon Child planned. With that, Dakoan opens the box and reveals the so-called yin-yang drum, which begins to glow. Inside the box is a glowing sphere that emanates a mysterious smoke. The Alliance leader comments on how surprising the drum is, but there was no trace of the 100 masters in the letter, so he doesn't know what to believe. One of the elders then questions him, asking if he's saying the whole letter is a load of nonsense. But Dakoan replies that he actually feels there's some mastermind behind all this confusion. The strategist agrees with the leader and says he has several reasons to be suspicious, starting with the fact that the enemy's objective didn't seem to be the secret weapon. He finishes by saying that their real goal was simply to harm the Miram Alliance on purpose. Dakoan adds that when they arrived at the mountain, there was no trace of the enemies, and their bodies had already disappeared. He also points out that the rumors in the market are spiraling out of control because of this. With that, the Alliance leader concludes that someone is intentionally drawing the entire martial world's attention to the Alliance. One of the elders is shocked by the theory and asks who would be capable of such a thing. Another member then suggests that the first suspect should be the head of the Zhou family, who was the one who brought the treasure map. Someone in the room defends the family head, saying he wouldn't be that kind of person. Because of this, Dakoan decides that, considering the gravity of the situation, they need to send someone to monitor the Zhou family, as there might be a spy among them. He adds that even if the Zhou family isn't the main perpetrator, they might just be aiding the treacherous forces. At that moment, the image focuses on the mysterious object inside the yin-yang drum. The scene then cuts to the entrance of the Zhou family house, where someone announces that the director has returned. Samao Chiel arrives with the group, and one of the members asks if he returns safely. Our protagonist observes the gigantic property and wonders if that's the girl's house, commenting on how huge the place is. Sama Chiel then turns and says he needs to see the family head immediately. He decides decides that before that, he'll take his new friend to the escort agency first. With that, the young man just follows him in silence as they walk through the property. Jo-seol, Yeon then approaches and apologizes, saying she wanted to get him a sheath on the way. Our protagonist finds that very strange and comments on how people from the outside world have a weird obsession with sheaths. He explains that no matter how good the sheath is, it can't withstand the sharp energy of his sword. A memory shows the young man's sword breaking several sheaths with its powerful aura. With that, the young man concludes that, as expected, he really doesn't need a sheath for his blade. Jo-seol, Yeon then apologizes again for offering to make him a sheath for no reason. The word sorry echoes in Dan Hyung Woo's mind with enormous weight. He remembers his friend Hong Woo apologizing in his final moments. The young man questions why his friend was apologizing when he was the one who was passing on. With a serious look, he turns to the young woman and asks what exactly she meant. Right after, he looks at her firmly and asks her to never say she's sorry again, as he doesn't want to hear those words anymore. Jo-seol Yeon is surprised by his reaction but nods in agreement and says she understands. Suddenly, Seol appears and calls for Hyung Woo, asking him to come immediately. With that, the young man turns and follows the man, leaving the young woman behind with a confused expression. The young woman stands there, wondering if she did something wrong to upset him. The scene shifts to the Hanam escort agency at night, where someone yells to be careful not to drop things. Sama-chil explains to our protagonist that he will be working as a porter. The young man understands that porters are the workers who transport goods at the agency. With that, Sama-chil shouts for a man named Jong-chil and informs him that he's brought the new porter for him to train. Jong-chil, who is carrying a heavy box, stops and asks with a mocking tone if a rookie has arrived. With a confident smile, the man turns to the director and tells him to leave everything to him. Sama-chil then warns that the new friend is a bit rude but quickly dismisses the concern. With that, he turns to Dan Hyung Woo and tells him to learn well, while the young man remains silent. The older man gives him one last piece of advice to work hard and leaves the two alone. Jong-chil breaks into a malicious smile and comments that there are no exceptions, not even for a rookie brought by the director. He approaches the protagonist and says that if there's a new guy in the area, he needs to be taught a few things, and asks for his name. As cool as a cucumber, our protagonist replies that his name is Dan Hyung Woo. Jong-chil is furious with the young man's short reply and questions why he's speaking so informally. The wanderer then provokes him back, saying that it's his arms and legs that are short, leaving the brute completely shocked. The unexpected response leaves everyone in the room with their jaws on the floor, while Jong-chil is paralyzed with rage, not knowing how to react. Blind with rage, Jong-chil yells and asks if the rookie wants to get himself done in on his first day of work. Our protagonist feels the strong hostility coming from him and gets a very serious expression. With a freezing glare, he wonders if he should just finish off this brute right here and now. Jong-chil then notices the sword on the young man's hip and angrily questions why he's carrying a weapon. He points to the sword and yells that a porter has no right to be armed, demanding he hand over the blade immediately. With complete tranquility, the wanderer replies that he can't give him the sword. The cold reply and the young man's killing intent leave Jong-chil completely terrified. Trying to hide his fear, the brute stammers and says it's getting late and they should call it a night. Our protagonist finds it strange how so many people are interested in his sword lately. The other porters burst out laughing and mock Jong-chil, saying he always acts like the boss but got scared of the new guy. Embarrassed, the brute yells at everyone to stop staring and go to sleep. The protagonist then says goodbye and tells everyone to have a good night's sleep. Next, Jong-chil calls him to follow, saying the shared quarters are this way. As he walks ahead, the brute thinks angrily that if it weren't for the sword, the rookie would be nothing. With clenched teeth, he swears he will get revenge for the humiliation he just endured. Later that night, in the porter's dormitory, everyone is fast asleep except for Jong-chil, who is stewing over the humiliation he suffered. Because of this, he quietly gets out of bed, determined to get revenge on the rookie. The brute starts tiptoeing through the dark room, looking for Dan Hyung Woo. With sweat dripping down his face, he thinks that the young man must be sleeping somewhere around here. Suddenly, he walks face first into something hard and unexpected in the middle of the path. With a hand on his sore face, the man wonders confusedly if there was a pillar right there. To his astonishment, he realizes it wasn't a pillar, but Dan Hyung Woo standing upright in the dark. Completely terrified, Jong-chil jumps back and asks in shock if the rookie wasn't asleep. Our protagonist remains with his eyes closed, with a tranquil expression as if in a deep sleep. The bizarre scene makes the brute break out in a cold sweat, and he questions if the wanderer is actually sleeping standing up. Believing this is his big chance, he reaches out to finally grab the young man's sword. In that same instant, Dan Hyung Woo's eyes snap open, glowing with a frightening bluish light. On pure instinct, Jong-chil freezes his movement in mid-air, completely paralyzed by the rookie's gaze. It was only for a second, but in that brief moment, something changed inside the brute. He felt like helpless prey in front of a fierce predator, a pressure that left him utterly frozen. The pressure is so crushing that the brute lets out a scream of pure terror, feeling a fear he had never experienced experienced before. He can hardly believe what he's feeling, but in his reflection, he sees his own demise approaching. It turns out that all of it was just an illusion created by Jong Chil's fear, who begins to beg to be spared. The man then falls backward onto the floor, completely terrified, unable to even finish his sentence. The truth is, Dan Hyong Woo was just circulating his protective energy while peacefully sleeping on his feet. The young man wasn't born with this habit of sleeping standing up. He developed it over time. During the long years he spent trapped in that cave, he had to adapt to survive. He lived in a constant state of alert every second of the day, whether eating or resting, always expecting a surprise attack. Because of this, he ended up developing the habit of sleeping on his feet while circulating his energy to always be ready for danger. The scene then shifts to outside the dormitory, where the morning sun begins to rise. Our protagonist finally opens his eyes and lets out a sigh, waking up completely. Looking down, he sees Jong Chil on the floor and wonders what that guy is doing there. The brute stares at him with pure dread and stammers, unable to form a coherent sentence. Right after Jong Chil lets out a scream and runs off in a panic, while the young man just wonders if that guy's name was really Jong Chil. Another porter wakes everyone up and announces they have a mountain of work ahead, which makes our protagonist curious about what this work is. The so-called work was carrying a bunch of wooden boxes stacked in the agency's courtyard. Our protagonist then uses his energy and simply makes 3 huge boxes float in the air with a wave of his hand. Right after, he takes an agile leap towards the levitating boxes. With absurd precision, the young man steps on one of the boxes to get momentum for his next move. His foot sinks slightly into the wood, showing the force of the impact, but without losing his balance. From there, he lands perfectly on top of a stack of boxes that he assembled himself. Looking down, he wonders if this is how it's done and concludes that this porter job isn't difficult at all. The other workers are left with their jaws on the floor at the scene, and one of them comments that it works. But it's pretty strange. The wanderer then turns and asks if he should do the rest, leaving the other men speechless. Before anyone could answer, he makes more boxes levitate, and the workers shout in desperation, telling him to be careful. Hiding 2 porters comment that this new guy is no ordinary person and that at this rate he'll steal all their work, until Jo Sol Yeon suddenly appears. The men are surprised to see the young miss and wonder what she's doing there, assuming she came for a meal. The young woman thinks that in the end, she ended up coming after him because she kept remembering the young man's words. She couldn't stop thinking about why he told her never to apologize again, and since she couldn't sleep, she went to find him. In that instant, Dan Hyung Woo notices her, and the two exchange glances in the middle of the agency's courtyard. The young woman gets all flustered and greets him, calling him brother, and realizes she said it on impulse. Our protagonist explains that he started working as a porter, and she asks with concern if he's not feeling uncomfortable with the new job. The young woman then stammers and asks what he likes or dislikes, but soon realizes that's not what she wanted to ask. With all the seriousness in the world, the young man replies that he likes peace and hates when that peace is broken. Jo Seol Yeon watches him attentively as he prepares to continue his answer. He then adds that he hates hearing his friends apologize. With a smile on her face, the young woman understands that he considers her a friend and promises she will never say that again. Suddenly, the sound of a horse's hoof hitting the ground echoes through the courtyard. The unexpected arrival catches the attention of the two, who turn to see who it is, and a man comments on the coincidence of their meeting. This man is Peng Chil-young, who arrives complimenting the beauty of Miss Jo. The young woman is surprised by his appearance and asks what brings him here. Peng Chil-young explains that he is on another mission from the Miram Alliance and that it has been decided they will provide as much support as possible to the Hanam escort agency. Contrary to Dan Hyung Woo's wish for peace, the world seems to be moving in another direction. The martial world was about to be thrown into a whirlwind of conflict. The scene then cuts to a room full of bodies, where someone wonders if the entire 30-person unit was really wiped out. In the midst of the bodies, a man with pink hair apologizes for not having found the culprit. That unit was so strong it could have easily defeated even the elite of the Miram Alliance. With that, a hand appears from behind a curtain, manipulating a dark, reddish energy. This energy then spreads through the room and begins to lift the bodies of the fallen warriors. The power is so great that all the men are thrown into the air without the slightest chance to react. The one responsible for all this was just one person, and the villain behind it all wonders if Chiangkija really created 100 monsters like that. With a malicious smile, he says he will see how long these creations last against the blood demon child, and that he will eagerly await it. Meanwhile, the survivors begin to carry their injured comrades out of the room. Their leader then gives the order to investigate everyone who accompanied the Miram Alliance to Hyangsan Mountain, without any exceptions. Full of rage, he shouts that they must find out who was responsible for wiping out his entire unit. The scene then returns to the Hanam agency, where a sunny and peaceful day begins. Jo Seol-yeon gets a slightly nervous expression as she watches the arrival of Peng Chil-young. The vice leader of the Ascending Dragon unit thinks about how Miss Seol-yeon is truly a beauty, but his gaze soon changes when he notices something and wonders why that guy is by Miss So Yan's side again. Peng Xiao Yang provokes him and finds it absurd for a simple porter to be walking around with a sword. Faced with the situation, the young woman grows worried and mentally pleads for Dan Hyung Woo not to get involved, as the other man represents the Miram Alliance. The vice leader is completely shocked to hear the young woman call the rookie brother, while his companion observes the scene. The woman, named Peng Mai Ryong, explains to her brother that she rushed there as soon as the Alliance leader's order came through because of Miss Zhou. In that instant, another man approaches the group and asks directly if he is Dan Hyung Woo. As cool as a cucumber, our protagonist confirms his identity, leaving the young woman a bit surprised. The newcomer introduces himself as Hyung Pyo and says he has come under the director's orders to train the new porter who will be joining an escort mission. Jo Seal Yan can't believe what she just heard and wonders how he's already going on an escort mission when he just started working. Peng Chiel Yang explains that the porter's job originally involves escort missions and celebrates having a chance to get closer to the young woman without that jerk around. The wanderer replies that he has no idea what an escort mission is but makes it clear he won't give up his sword. Hyung Pyo is confused by the response and the informal way the young man speaks but just asks him to follow. The vice leader takes the opportunity to mock the rookie and asks why he's stalling and keeping his superior waiting. Peng Mai Ryong observes the scene and thinks about how childish men can be, even when holding a vice leader position. Her attention turns to the protagonist, who isn't even fazed by the provocation, and she wonders if that sword is just for show. Paying no attention to the commotion, Dan Hyung Woo simply turns his back and walks away, leaving Jo Seal Yan worried. Peng Chiel Yang scoffs at the young man, thinking he's leaving because he got offended, and calls him a useless man. However, the young man simply replies that he's following orders, leaving Jo Seal Yan completely confused. He then explains that he can't get fired, so he's just doing as he's told. The young woman looks at him with a relieved expression and quietly calls him brother. With that, the protagonist begins to follow Hyung Pyo, leaving the young woman behind. Meanwhile, in the director's office, Samel Chiel gives the order for Hyung Pyo to ensure the rookie doesn't cause any trouble on the escort mission. The real reason behind the order is that he needs to separate the two before the young man gets any closer to Seal Yan. Hyung Pyo doesn't understand the director's concern and questions him about what he means by helping a grown adult. The director doesn't know how to explain and just says he'll understand when he meets him in person. Outside, Hyung Pyo remembers that the young man lived alone in the mountains and understands the reason for his strange way of speaking, but what catches his attention the most is the fact that a simple porter walks around with a sword. With a curious smile, he turns and asks if by any chance the wanderer practices swordsmanship. Our protagonist then reveals that his technique is called the Three Powers Sword Technique. Hyung Pyo immediately recognizes the name and understands that he's dealing with a rookie dreaming of becoming an escort warrior, since that technique is just the basics of martial arts. To prove his point, he draws his own sword, ready to show the difference in their levels. Our protagonist just stares at the man with a very serious look. With his sword in hand, Hyung Pyo challenges him and asks him to show his skills. The wanderer understands the challenge in a very different way and asks if that means the man wants to finish him off. Hyung Pyo is completely shocked by the question and explains that he just wants to test each other's skills in a friendly match. The young man still doesn't get the concept and repeats the question about testing skills. With complete tranquility, he simply states that he is stronger. The response leaves Hyung Pyo with his jaw on the floor, not understanding the rookie's audacity. He then bursts out laughing, finding it impossible that someone who just picked up a sword could be as strong as him, who has trained his entire life. Despite the audacity, he praises the young man's confidence and says he'll show him how to become truly stronger. Our protagonist then extends his hand and beckons him to fight with a smirk. The gesture is clear and shows that he is more than ready to begin the combat. Hyung Pyo is confused by the scene and wonders what the wanderer is doing now. The young man explains that since it's his first time not going all out, he needs to calculate the force he's going to use. With that, he begins to make some strange movements with his hands, as if measuring the distance between them. After finishing his calculation, he announces that he now knows how to avoid a disaster and is ready to begin. Hyung Pyo finally understands what the director meant by that strange conversation. Despite this, he decides to go ahead and charges at the rookie. With his sword in hand, the man rushes forward with full force toward the protagonist. Our protagonist just watches the attack approach with a calm and analytical gaze. He wonders if that's the level of the attack coming his way. With a smirk, the young man concludes that to avoid an accident, he needs to strike right in front of the opponent's eyes. With that, he moves with absurd speed head, preparing his counter-attack. A powerful bluish energy begins to emanate from his body, illuminating everything around. This energy transforms into a gigantic pillar of light that shoots up to the sky, right between the two of them. Hyung Pyo is completely shocked by the scene and can hardly believe the power he is witnessing. The force of the energy explosion is so great that the man is thrown backward with no chance to react. He then crashes to the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust with the impact. Lying on the ground, Hyung Pyo realizes that this was nothing like the three powers sword technique he knew. His mind goes blank as he tries to process what just happened. Our protagonist approaches the fallen man and, with complete calm, asks if it hurt a lot. Still on the ground, Hyung Pyo asks what kind of martial art that was. Our protagonist replies that it was literally the three powers sword technique, specifically a move called Heavenly Thunder. Hyung Pyo is confused because even though it was the three powers technique, it seemed completely different. From there, he understands that the name Heavenly Thunder makes perfect sense, as the energy looked like a bolt of lightning from the sky, and he wonders if the director knew the young man was a supreme master. Dan Hyung-woo just reaffirms what he had said before and says that either way, he is stronger. With a sigh, Hyung Pyo thinks that despite the absurd skill level, the young man's innocence is no different from a child's. With that, he decides he can inform the director later and that first, he needs to teach his new friend about society so he can use his martial arts correctly. Faced with the situation, it becomes clear that what he needs to teach is not martial arts. Our protagonist just listens to everything with a slight smile on his face. Hyung Pyo then explains that in moments like this, the right thing to do is to extend a hand and help the person up. The young man seems to understand what he means and lets out a brief ha of understanding. With that, he takes Hyung Pyo's hand, and the two seal the beginning of a new friendship. From that day on, Dan Hyung-woo went to live at the house of the escort warrior, Hyung Pyo. At night, Hyung Pyo comes across a bizarre scene and asks in shock if the young man really sleeps like that. In this way, the protagonist begins to learn about the world he missed during all those years of training. In another moment, Hyung Pyo despairs and yells at the protagonist not to take his clothes off outside. The escort warrior turns bright red with embarrassment at his new friend's behavior. Despite all the confusion, the young man slowly begins to open his heart to Hyung Pyo and the other porters, but the learning continues and now Hyung Pyo has to stop his friend from taking off his pants too. Meanwhile, hidden behind a pillar, Peng Mi, Ryong observes all the activity in the courtyard. She then remembers the mission she received to monitor every move of the Zhou family. The reason is the suspicion that the family is connected to the attack on Hyungsan Mountain, and for that, they need proof. With a determined look, the woman confirms she will carry out the will of the alliance leader. Back in the present, she observes the scene and thinks there's no one suspicious around, just that weird guy. Her gaze then turns to the upper floor, where Jo Seol Yeon is also watching the scene. With a smirk, she comments that the young miss has very unique tastes. The young woman, however, observes the young man with a smile and thinks proudly of her brother, Hyung-woo. She realizes that he has finally become a true member of the Hanam escort agency. The scene then cuts to the agency, where everything seems to be preparing for a new journey. Two horses are shown ready to depart, indicating that the escort mission is about to begin. Director Sama Chil bids farewell to the escort leader, Ma Yuk, and wishes him to complete the important mission safely. Ma Yuk replies confidently, telling the director not to worry as he will complete everything in the name of the Hanam agency. With that, he shouts for everyone to be alert as the escort mission is departing. Right after, the caravan begins to move at high speed through the city. Jong Chil and the other porters march with serious expressions, accompanying the convoy. Amidst a small crowd, Jo Seol Yeon watches the departure in silence. Beside her, our protagonist and Hyung Pyo also watch everything attentively. At that moment, the ascending dragon unit of the Miram Alliance arrives and announces they are there to see the head of the Zhou family. The head of the Zhou family, Joel Hyan, receives them and asks if the alliance leader is well. With all the hospitality in the world, he invites them in and to sit at the table. Joel Hyan recognizes the two as the twin dragons of the unit, and Peng Chil Yong introduces himself. The family head then deduces that the other young man must be the sword dragon. With a polite smile, the man thanks him for the compliment and says his name is Namgong Jin. The woman beside him also introduces herself as Peng Mai Ryong, Peng Chil Yong's younger sister. Joel Hyan then comments that the Peng family is the greatest martial arts family in Hebei while holding a cup. He continues the praise, saying that since she is so beautiful and lovely, she could form a good connection with his son. With an inviting smile, the family head asks them to share their wisdom with his children through a martial arts exchange. Peng Chiel, Yang agrees with the idea and says they should be the ones grateful for the opportunity. Peng Mai Ryong just observes everything in silence as she brings the cup to her lips. She then remembers their true mission, which is to find out if the Zhou family is connected to the attack on Hyongsan Mountain. Despite the surveillance mission, Peng Mai Ryong notices that her brother is more interested in something else. The young man can only pay attention to the young miss of the Zhou family, Zhou Xiol. Yan, in turn, shows off her sword skills while training with her brother. After a few days of observation, Peng Mai Ryong realizes that the young woman is not actually looking at her brother, but at some random porter. Peng Chiel Yan, however, is not worried about the situation at all. He heard that the young man left on an escort mission that will last several months and believes that's more than enough time to win Miss Xiol Yan's heart. Meanwhile, the porters and Hyang Pao gather for a final meal before leaving on the mission. The meat is prepared in a large pot in the middle of the table, creating a festive atmosphere. Dan Hyang Woo, however, is completely focused on the food in front of him. He brings a piece of meat to his mouth without caring about anything else around him. With a slight smile, our protagonist enjoys the meal with his eyes closed, savoring every bite. For the young man, cooked food was a good thing and represented the most exciting moment since he came out into the world. Hyang Pao comments that he always feels the same way watching him eat, as he is the first person who acts if he's performing a ritual during a meal. Right after, he advises his friend to eat well so that the escort mission won't be too difficult and reveals that their destination is Sichuan, the homeland of the Tang family. The escort warrior finishes by saying that their client is the Sichuan Tang family. As a group of people approaches in the background, an older man wearing a straw hat is introduced as Tang Ho Guan, an elder of the Sichuan Tang family. Beside him is a younger man named Tang Chiel, another member of the same family. Hyang Pao continues his explanation to Dan Hyang Woo, who listens attentively. He says that besides the escort agency's warriors, the Tang family themselves have sent their personal guards for the mission. Because of this, he can't even imagine how precious the goods they are transporting must be. Our protagonist stops eating for a moment, and his gaze becomes serious, as if he noticed something strange. At that moment, a butterfly lands on Tang Ho Guan's hat, and the elder comments on the pleasant fragrance coming from it. Despite the compliment, the old man finds the insect a nuisance and raises his hand to get rid of it. With a simple flick of his fingers, a greenish energy disintegrates the butterfly in mid-air. Right after the act, the elder is surprised and wonders what that strange sensation he felt was. Tang Chiel Ji notices the elder's reaction and asks if something happened. The older man replies that he felt an unusual aura coming from one of the porters. With his eyes glowing red, he tries to find out who that strange energy is coming from. His gaze passes over the other workers, who continue eating peacefully, unaware of anything. From there, the elder's gaze fixes on Dan Hyang Woo, who remains with a serene expression. At that exact moment, Miyuk, the escort leader, arrives on his horse, interrupting the analysis. He approaches and informs them that all preparations are complete and the mission can begin. Tang Ho Guan looks away and wonders if the aura he felt was actually that of the escort leader. Miyuk warns that they have a long road ahead and need to leave soon, while the elder still wonders if that man's energy has always been so strong. With that, the leader shouts for the warriors and porters to finish their meals so they can leave. He delivers a passionate speech saying that the symbol of the Hanam agency is speed and that they need to reach Sichuan in a month and a half instead of the usual 4 months. The other porters are shocked by the tight deadline and wonder how they will achieve such a feat. Hyang Pao takes the opportunity to warn the protagonist that if he falls behind, he will be kicked out of the agency immediately. Yuk then gives the final order for everyone to prepare for immediate departure. Dan Hyang Woo becomes thoughtful at the warning and wonders why his friend would tell him not to fall behind. With that, the caravan dashes off at high speed, and the reason Yuk's missions were so difficult wasn't just because he didn't take shortcuts. The real reason is that everyone, including the porters, had to run at the same speed as the horses. Even with the rush, Dan Hyang Woo still doesn't understand what falling behind means, while Hyang Pao tries to encourage him, telling him to hang in there. Despite the frantic pace of the escort mission, our protagonist keeps up as if he were taking a walk in the park. The group continues running nonstop from sunrise to sunset, with no sign of slowing down. During the night, one of the men wonders if the young man even sleeps, and Hyang Pao explains that he usually sleeps standing up like that. In this way, the protagonist and the escort group continue their relentless journey. They reach Pyeongjuang Mountain in the Nahol district in just 2 days of travel. Suddenly, a mysterious spear flies at high speed toward them from within the forest. Tang Chiel Ji senses the danger and yells for everyone to stop immediately. The spear glows with a powerful bluish energy, making it clear this is no ordinary attack. Without hesitation, Yuk charges forward on his horse and draws his sword, ready to intercept the projectile. With a swift and precise movement, he manages to deflect the spear with his blade, saving the caravan. Right after, the escort leader turns and shouts, asking who those people are. A mysterious voice answers from the forest, saying that's the question they should be asking, as someone emerges from the trees. Right after, a group of muscular, unfriendly-looking men comes out of the forest, surrounding the caravan. Their leader, a huge bald man, threatens them, saying that if they hand over the goods, they can leave alive, as they have entered the territory of the Green Forest. Faced with the situation, Tang-ho Guan tells his companion not to worry, because if it's just the Green Forest bandits, they just need to watch. Hyung Pyo also tries to calm the protagonist, saying they just need to pay a toll, while the young man wonders if they are like the bandits from the other time. With that, Myuk throws a large amount of coins to the bandits and tells them to clear the way. The bandit leader catches the coins in the air with a smug smile on his face. With that, he simply cuts the rope holding the coins and lets them fall to the ground with contempt. The bald man gets annoyed with the amount and demands they hand over all the goods and get out of there. Without giving anyone time to react, the bandit leaps into the air and charges at Mo Yuk with a surprise attack. Hyung Pyo is completely shocked by the scene and shouts about the enemy's sudden attack. Our protagonist, however, watches everything calmly and notices that the man has a strong intention to finish them off. Mounted on his horse, the escort leader prepares to defend against the blow coming from above. With a war cry, the brute descends with a powerful strike of his sword toward Ma Yuk. The attack hits its mark, and the escort leader is injured in the process. The force of the impact is so great that it knocks Ma Yuk and his horse to the ground, showing the bandit's power. The bandit leader lets out a laugh and mocks the Hanam agency before ordering his men to finish everyone off. With the leader's order, the group of bandits charges at the caravan in a massive attack. One of the porters despairs, wondering how they will manage to deal with so many enemies at once. Tang-ho Guan, however, realizes they are not ordinary bandits and questions who is behind this attack. The bandit leader scoffs at the question and boasts that they are heroes proudly affiliated with the Green Forest. With a war cry, he charges at Tang-ho Guan and tells the elder to consider it an honor to be defeated by him. The elder laments the situation and says that if they were just bandits, they could have kept their lives. As he prepares an attack with needles, the needle hits a tree with an explosion of purple energy, showing the devastating power of the attack. With that, the needle remains embedded in the tree, continuing to emanate a dark and mysterious energy. The bandit leader can hardly believe what he sees, and is completely shocked by the scene. He wonders how golden needles could cause such damage as his body begins to disintegrate. With that, the man's silhouette simply vanishes into thin air, leaving no trace behind. The other bandits are completely terrified by the scene, and can't understand what just happened. Tang-ho Guan glares at the survivors with a deadly look and questions if they really dared to touch the Tang family's goods. A purple aura explodes around him as he launches a shower of needles and asks if they thought they could lay a finger on his things. The shower of needles flies through the air, hitting several bandits at once, giving them no chance to react. With that, one of the men screams in pain as one of the needles pierces his body with tremendous force. Right after, another bandit is also hit and lets out a cry of agony from the fatal and unexpected attack. Faced with the fallen bodies, a new threat emerges from the forest, and their leader comments that, as expected, the Green Forest alone was not enough. This group is the Death Spirit Troop, and their leader says that since Elder Tang-ho Guan has appeared in person, they can no longer retreat. With a determined look, he reveals that this is an order from the family head: no one is to be left alive. Tang-ho Guan realizes the seriousness of the situation and warns his companion to prepare, as these guys are the real enemies. He adds that even if the entire Hanam escort agency is defeated, they must deliver the goods to the main family in Sichuan. With that, Tang Cheol-ji turns to his men and reminds them that they are the elite he chose himself, and that they must protect the cargo to the very end. The Death Spirit Troop charges forward, and their leader shouts for no survivors to be left behind. From there, a chaotic battle begins, with the masked warriors attacking the agency members and the Tang family guards without mercy. Even injured, Ma Yuk continues to fight, blocking an enemy's attack with his sword. Amidst all the chaos, our protagonist just watches the fight with a tranquil expression while Hyung Pyo and Tang Cheol-ji face the enemies around him. One of the warriors screams in desperation while someone orders everyone to maintain formation, but the young man just continues to watch in silence. The battle remains brutal, and one of the masked warriors finishes off an escort agency member with a fatal blow. Ma Yuk realizes they are no match for these enemies, as they are true masters, and notes that even with the advantage, the Tang family has no intention of helping them. With that, one of the enemies takes advantage of the distraction and hits Hyung Pyo squarely, leaving the escort warrior in trouble. Our protagonist sees the scene, and his expression changes completely upon seeing his friend get injured in front of him. Lying on the ground, Hyung Pyo is completely vulnerable, and the masked warrior prepares to deliver the final blow. In that instant, a memory flashes through Dan Hyung Woo's mind of when Hyung Pyo offered him his food with a smile on his face. This memory is the trigger he needed, and the young man finally finally draws his sword, which glows with a powerful bluish energy. With a single movement, he unleashes the Heavenly Thunder technique, and a gigantic pillar of light shoots up to the sky, right in the middle of the enemies. The energy is so intense that one of the masked warriors is completely disintegrated by the force of the attack. The enemy's body is thrown far away by the explosion while Hyung Pai watches, completely shocked by what just happened. The other enemies are left clueless, wondering what that sudden explosion was and if a bolt of lightning had just struck from the sky. Hyung Pai then turns to the protagonist and asks if that technique was the heavenly thunder he used the other time. With renewed hope, he shouts for his friend to save the other comrades as well. Our protagonist, however, replies as cool as a cucumber that he saved him only because it was him. Hyung Pai is desperate at the response and pleads with tears in his eyes for him to save the others, as they are all his comrades. As they talk, the battle continues, and another member of the escort agency is defeated by the enemies. One of the porters kneels in desperation and begs for his life, shouting that they are just workers with no internal energy. Our protagonist then says he doesn't know what the word comrades means, but he adds that since his friend asked, he will do as he was told and dashes towards the fight. With absurd speed, the young man advances through the battlefield with a determined look. The other porters are left with their jaws on the floor at the scene, unable to understand the rookie's actions. Meanwhile, the battle continues, and Ma Yuk can barely defend himself from the enemy's attacks. Tang Ho Guan is also in an intense fight, blocking a warrior's blade with difficulty. One of the masked warriors mocks the elder, saying his weapons don't work on them, as the protagonist passes like a blur in the background. The elder is completely shocked and wonders what just passed by him, as he could barely see the movement. It turns out that Dan Hyang Woo moved so fast that only the elder managed to vaguely perceive his movement to block an attack. With a calm look, the young man turns to the enemies and asks if that's enough. Right after, an explosion of bluish energy sweeps across the entire battlefield, sending the enemies flying. Our protagonist just watches the scene with a calm expression as chaos erupts around him. The dust kicks up and covers the entire forest, showing the absurd power of the attack he just unleashed. The leader of the Death Spirit troop can hardly believe what he sees and wonders if his entire unit was really wiped out. A mysterious woman named Uman Hai questions her subordinate if he hadn't said that the Death Spirit troop would be enough to handle the agency, and the man apologizes and explains that there seems to be an unknown master among them and that he needs to confirm this person's identity, but Uman Hai decides she will check the situation herself, which leaves her subordinate completely shocked. With a confident smile, the woman says she will find out who this so-called master is herself. The scene then cuts to the Yuman clan, a place that, despite not being among the 5 great clans, is in no way inferior, as it controls a third of the world's trade. Secret information about the Sichuan Tang family has leaked to the Yuman clan, and its leader asks one of his men if he found out what they are hiding. The man replies that the Sichuan Tang family has managed to produce thunderclap grenades, and that 5 shipments are already on their way to the main house. The Yuman clan leader, named Yuman Huang, becomes thoughtful upon learning that the Tang clan has rediscovered the method of making the thunderclap grenades, which had disappeared for centuries. His subordinate is worried because even with the Tang clan's help, they shouldn't be able to create such a weapon, but then he remembers that the Firesmith Mansion are the descendants of the Thunder Sect. With this, Ma Hong understands that the heirs of the Thunder Sect have finally brought the method back to the world and realizes that 5 shipments of that weapon are a great danger. He remembers the old records that described how the thunderclap grenades were used to blow up entire regions with their devastating formula. From there, the clan leader crushes a bird in his hand and states with a determined look that they must take those weapons for themselves. With a tear in his eye, the subordinate then reveals that after hearing the news, the young miss left with the Death Spirit troop. Aman Huang is furious at the news and asks where his daughter Hai has gone, and the man replies that she is probably near Pyeongchang Mountain. Right after, the scene shows Yuman Hai riding at high speed through the forest, determined to complete her mission. Back on the battlefield, Aman Hai arrives at the scene and observes with a calm look. Thanks to Dan Hyung Woo's efforts, the Hanam agency eliminated all the enemies but suffered the loss of almost all its warriors. Only the escort leader Ma Yuk severely injured, and the warrior Hyung Pyo survived the battle. Along with them, a group of terrified porters also managed to get out of the mess alive. With the chaotic situation, Tang Cheol Ji suggests they hire another escort agency, as continuing like this will be very difficult, but the elder disagrees and says they must trust the agency to the end. The young man is outraged by his uncle's decision and questions him about leaving the escort in the hands of an agency in that condition, suggesting they hire a smaller local agency since they have the Heavenly Thunder technique on their side. Tang Ho Guan is shocked by the revelation, and his nephew congratulates him for having perfected the Tang family's secret technique and asks why he didn't tell him sooner. The elder explains that he barely saw what happened, so it's not surprising that his nephew's eyes didn't catch the movement, and reveals that it wasn't him who used the technique. Tang Ji is completely confused and asks who was responsible for the attack if it wasn't the elder. Tang Ho Guan then says that if his eyes don't deceive him, it was the porter with the sword right over there who used the heavenly thunder technique. With that, the elder approaches the protagonist and asks which sect he came from. Dan Haiyang Wu doesn't understand the question, and the older man explains that he's asking about the place where he learned martial arts. The young man then reveals that Qiankija never taught him martial arts. With a furious look, he adds that the master just threw them into that inferno, and that his martial arts are his own, a memory of his hellish battle surfaces, and he explains that everything he knows was earned after countless life, or death battles over a long time. With that, he finishes by saying he has nothing like a sect, and makes it clear that he belongs nowhere. Tang Ho Guan is completely shocked and questions if he's saying that level of skill simply fell from the sky. Haiyang Pio is desperate at his friend's attitude and scolds him for speaking that way to an elder of the Tang family. With that, the escort warrior apologizes to the elder and explains that the young man lived alone in the mountains for a long time and asks him to ignore his lack of manners. Tang Ho Guan, however, realizes that the young man is the arrogant type who trusts only in his own strength and concludes that for the mission's safety, they need that power. He also notices that the porter seems to listen well to the escort warrior, and Haiyang Pio takes the opportunity to ask the protagonist not to speak that way anymore. The elder then turns to Haiyang Pio and praises him, saying he has more skill than he thought, which leaves the warrior completely confused. Without giving him time to react, Tang Ho Guan names him the new escort leader and says that this way, the one who uses the heavenly thunder will also be under protection. Haiyang Pio is left with his jaw on the floor at the appointment and can hardly believe what he just heard. One of the injured porters then tells him to accept, as he's the only one left, and that he'll go back to the agency to ask for reinforcements. Another porter encourages him and tells him to lead them the rest of the way. Haiyang Pio understands the gravity of the situation and realizes that someone needs to take responsibility for the mission. With a determined look, he accepts the appointment and promises that he will act as the escort leader and will lead them to Sichuan safely. Tang Ho Guan agrees with the decision and says that since it seems difficult to continue today, they will leave the next day. Tang Ji stands there completely shocked, wondering if any of this makes any sense. He can hardly process that this rookie porter is actually a supreme master who has mastered the heavenly thunder technique. With that, the Hanem Escort Agency's journey continues, now under the leadership of Haiyang Pio, who tells everyone to get some rest. Meanwhile, Miyuk rides as fast as he can back to the agency to report the ambush as quickly as possible. The former leader worries because even with Dan Haiyang Wu's strength, the danger is still great and he needs reinforcements. Suddenly, he senses something strange in the air and is completely shocked, not understanding what's happening. He realizes that something else is moving toward the Hanem agency and that he needs to hurry. But it's too late, and a chained weapon reflects in his eyes, just in time for him to see the attack. Right after, the weapon hits him squarely, throwing him far from his horse with the force of the impact. The man crashes to the ground while the mysterious weapon flies through the air after completing its objective. Right after the impact, the weapon returns to its owner, who watches everything from the shadows of the dark forest. From the trees, a group of masked assassin suddenly emerges, ready for the next attack. This is the Ghost Mask Hand's assassination unit of the Blood Demon Child, an elite troop. Their leader then announces that the rat has been successfully eliminated, showing the group's efficiency. With the first obstacle out of the way, he declares that the next target is the Zhou family. Inside the Zhou family property, Director Sima Chiol complains that today's work seems endless, but his boss asks if he wants to stop there. With a determined look, Sima Chiol says no, because the more you postpone work and training, the less you get done. The head of the Zhou family agrees with the director's mindset and continues his tasks. With a brush in hand, Sima Chiol prepares to continue his calligraphy with dark ink. Suddenly, he feels a strange presence and becomes alert, wondering what it is. In that same instant, a puddle of ink forms on the floor, as if something had fallen from the ceiling. The ink then turns into a red stain and splatters everywhere. One of the guards is hit by a surprise attack and screams in pain before falling to the ground, and someone alerts everyone about the ambush. The head of the Zhou family and Sima Chiol realize the seriousness of the situation, and the director comments that, as expected, they have come. Outside, the assassination unit charges forward, and their leader shouts that this is the Zhou family and that no one should be left alive. The family head grabs a weapon and shouts furiously, asking what lunatics dare to attack his family. But Sama Chiel stops him and yells for him to get away from the fight immediately. The family head is confused by the order and asks what the director is doing. With sweat dripping down his face, Sama Chiel explains that the killing intent he feels is not ordinary and that it doesn't seem like something they can easily stop. Outside, the battle has already begun, and the assassination unit massacres the Zhou family guards with swift and precise strikes. Sama Chiel says seriously that because of this, the family head has another place to go right now. With that, the head of the Zhou family starts running hastily to the indicated location. He then bursts into Zhou Sul Yan's room and shouts that it's an emergency, surprising the young woman. The family head tells her to get out of there immediately and hurry to get ready, while Zhou In watches everything. With a frightened face, the young woman asks what's happening and what will become of her father. Outside, the family property is in flames, and cries for help echo through the dark night under the moonlight. The masked assassins continue the massacre, and one of the guards screams in pain as he's caught by a fatal attack. Their leader then gives the order to finish off the Hanem escort agency as well, leaving nothing behind. Meanwhile, some horses are prepared for the escape amidst all the chaos of the battle. With that, Zhou El Hyan and his children mount the horses and start riding away from the burning property. The entire Zhou family property is consumed by flames that light up the dark night. As she flees, the young woman notices that the fire has not only spread to the family house but also to the Hanem escort agency. Her father shouts at her not to stop, as they need to get out of there as fast as possible. But the young woman worries because her father is still back there, and the family head questions if she has forgotten who he is. Right after, he grabs his spear and reveals himself as Zhou Il Hyan, the spear of Hanem and the #1 spear in Henan. With that, the head of the Zhou family draws his spear and unleashes absurd power. The energy is so strong that the property's roof is completely destroyed in the process. Director Sama Chiel then remembers that in the Heacheng region, no one can match the power of the spear of Hanem. The masked assassins watch him from a distance, and one of them identifies him as the head of the Zhou family. With a furious look, Zhou El Hyan prepares to face the horde of enemies alone. Right after, the leader of the assassination unit gives the order for his men to attack him and bring back his head. Far away, Sama Chiel shouts to the young ones, saying they need to understand that their family is holding off the enemies so they can escape. With tears in her eyes, Zhou Sil Yan says she understands but still seems very reluctant to leave everyone behind. Sama Chiel then asks the members of the Ascending Dragon unit to stay with them, but the young man replies that they are going back to the Miram Alliance. Zhou In is completely shocked by the answer and questions what he is saying. Peng Mai Ryong then explains seriously that they need to report the attack to the Miram Alliance as quickly as possible. Peng Chiel Yang agrees with his sister, but Zhou In reminds them that the enemies will soon start chasing them. Faced with the situation, Sama Chiel realizes that if he can't count on them, he can only think of one other person. From there, a memory surfaces, and he remembers the porter who single-handedly drove off the Green Forest bandits on Hyongsan Mountain. With a determined look, the director concludes that they will find another way to resolve this. With that, the Peng siblings wish them to stay safe and ride off into the darkness of the night. Sai Mao Chiel then says that they also need to hurry to catch up with the escort group that left for Sichuan. With tears in her eyes, the young woman agrees and believes that if she can find her brother, Hyung Woo, he will know exactly what to do. Because of this, she prays that her father can stay safe until she can return with the necessary help. Meanwhile, at the Zhou family property, the battle finally ends with the masked assassins victorious over the bodies of their enemies. Amidst all the destruction, Zhou El Hyan can barely stand, his body covered in blood, as he holds his spear with difficulty. Even in that deplorable state, the family head demands to know who these people are and why they attacked his home. In response, the assassins let out a mocking laugh as a dark and mysterious figure emerges from behind them. This man then asks with disdain if he really thinks they would tell him anything before ending his life. Zhou El Hyan shouts furiously and demands that the mysterious man reveal himself once and for all. The dark figure complies with the request and unleashes a powerful attack with a sinister red energy. The family head reflects the attack in his eye and is completely shocked to see the shape of a demonic hand coming toward him. The blow hits him squarely, and he can hardly believe the man is still alive as he tries to say a name that starts with Kion, but the villain interrupts him, saying he has already abandoned that name. The mysterious man observes the destruction and comments that this pile of ashes was the Zhou family until yesterday and asks one of his subordinates about his assassins. The subordinate approaches and informs him that they are pursuing the survivors of the Zhou lineage to finish them all off once and for all. The man still can't understand the situation and asks why they are doing this. He wonders about the reason the blood demon child wants to wipe out the Zhou family. Because of this, the villain asks if his subordinate knows what his relationship with Chiangkija was. The man replies that he knows the two were great rivals who risked their lives in combat. The villain confirms the information and reveals that he and Chiangkija were inseparable, but now only he is left. With this, he explains that the first place Chiankija planned to train his 100 masters was precisely the Zhou family house. Therefore, he says it was obviously there that he needed to start the first step to destroy all of Chiankija's plans. With a malicious smile, the villain declares that they cannot let any member of that rotten Zhou family lineage escape. Meanwhile, under the starry sky, the group of fugitives rides desperately through the dark forest. Sama Chiel notices they are getting closer and thinks that if they run just a little more, they will find the escort group. Joan, however, is already completely exhausted from the escape and can barely breathe properly. The young man starts to fall behind, his horse losing breath in the middle of the chase. Seeing the scene, the director shouts for him not to fall behind and to keep running just a little longer, but Joan says he will try to follow them and asks the man to take his sister to safety first. Sama Chiel shouts back that he can't do that, but it's too late, and a chained weapon flies toward them. The young man realizes he's going to be the reason they all get captured, and the weapon hits him squarely. Faced with the scene, the director and the young woman scream Joan's name in desperation. With that, the impact brutally throws the young man from his horse. With tears in her eyes, the young woman desperately screams for her brother. From there, the masked assassins advance through the air, ready for the attack. One of the assassins aims for the Zhou family's daughter and advances to capture her. The young woman lets out a scream of terror as she sees the blade approaching rapidly. Right after, her horse is hit and crashes to the ground. Then the assassins surround the fallen survivors. Lying on the ground, the director calls for Yan, with difficulty. With tears streaming down, he thinks that she was the only child he truly wanted to protect. The young woman realizes that if they followed them this far, her father has probably already been defeated, but her mind turns to her other brother. The assassin praises their escape skills but warns that the game is over. With his sword glowing with a sinister energy, he prepares to deliver the final blow. Desperate, the young woman pleads for anyone to save her, as she desperately wants to live. Suddenly, a powerful bluish energy explodes in the middle of the forest. The assassin's blade shatters into several pieces with the force of the impact. With her eyes full of tears, the young woman watches the scene with renewed hope. Amidst the bluish energy, our protagonist suddenly appears, ready to fight. The young woman recognizes him instantly and calls him Brother Hyang Woo, while the young man points in her direction with a serious look. He then says, as cool as a cucumber, that he heard her voice. Upon hearing that, the young woman can't hold back her tears of relief. With that, the young man positions himself in front of the group to protect them from the enemies. The masked assassins are completely shocked and wonder who this guy is. Lying on the ground, the director looks at Dan Hyang Woo and asks him to take care of Yan, calling the young man uncle. Our protagonist just nods in silence, accepting the man's request. With his last strength, Sama Chiel says that's enough and closes his eyes. The leader of the assassins, however, is not intimidated and shouts for his men to finish off this extra body. But before they can attack, the young man places his hand on the young woman's head, who wonders what that is. As she feels her brother's touch, the young woman feels all the fear and exhaustion in her body simply melt away like snow. With a calm look, our protagonist tells the young woman to wipe what's running from her eyes. He then faces the assassins and warns that he'll finish this quickly. Without wasting a second, the young man leaps into the air, ready to begin the attack. In the blink of an eye, he passes through all the enemies, delivering precise and swift cuts. One of the assassins screams in terror, wondering what kind of martial art this is that he has never seen before. Right after, Dan Hyang Woo lands on the ground as the energy of his attack dissipates. Joseol Yan is completely shocked to realize that nearly 20 assassins were turned to ash in a single instant. She then looks at her fallen brother and wonders if she had strength like the protagonists, if she would have been able to protect her family from that tragic fate. The young woman turns to Sama Chiel's body and says she'll be right back. Then, she promises that she will let him rest in a much better place. Completely lost, the young woman turns to the young man and asks what she should do now. She adds that without her father or her brother, she doesn't know what to do on her own. The word alone echoes in Dan Hyang Woo's mind with a different weight. Faced with the situation, he remembers that he also survived that inferno and came out into the world with no one. The young man recalls that the young woman was the first person to extend a hand to him, and for that reason, he will do the same for her. With that, our protagonist carefully embraces her and tells her to live. He continues and tells her to be grateful for those who are gone and to live doing what she truly wants. The young woman becomes thoughtful and wonders what she really wants to do from now on. With a determined look, Joseol Yan reveals that she also wants to join the escort mission. Dan Hyang Woo then takes her hand firmly. With a slight smile, he announces that they are leaving now and asks her to hold on tight. The young woman is completely confused by the young man's sudden action and asks what he means. Without even giving her time to react, the two of them shoot up into the sky at high speed. Jo Yeon is left with her jaw on the floor as she realizes they are literally flying through the air. She realizes that this is more than just a simple lightness technique. It feels like flying through the clouds. Because of the absurd speed, all her tears are carried away by the wind, leaving no trace behind. The young man's action was a much greater comfort to the young woman than any words he could have said. Flying through the skies, she realizes that her brother is truly an incredible person, using such a technique as if he were taking a simple stroll. From there, the young woman remembers that her uncle was also a master, but that the young man turned those assassins to ash in the blink of an eye. The young woman then questions him on how he can be so strong, since the age difference between them isn't that great. Our protagonist responds very directly that fighting for your own life for a long time ends up making you like this. Jo Yeon asks who exactly he fought against, and the young man reveals they were demons. With a surprised expression, she questions if he means monsters, and Dan Hyung-woo agrees that's one way to see it. With this, the young woman becomes even more interested in the story and asks him to tell her more details. Our protagonist remains silent for a moment, seeming very hesitant to talk about the subject. For him, talking about that inferno means reliving the memories of his bloody battles. It also means having to remember his 99 friends who perished during the training. And finally, he would have to get to the one responsible for that whole tragedy, his old master, Cheonkija. The young man then reveals that the master ended up passing away, and that's why he could never get the revenge he so desperately wanted. Flying toward the rising sun, he says he will tell her this story on another occasion. With that, the two of them continue running nonstop through the forest, hoping to find the escort group. Suddenly, a familiar voice calls out for the young miss, and the young woman turns with a surprised expression. It turns out they have finally found Hyung Pyo and the other porters, who are completely shocked to see her there. That was the last escort group of the Hanam agency, and there our protagonist finally reunites with his mission companions. Then, Hyung Pyo reveals a shocking theory, saying that he doesn't actually believe Cheonkija is gone. The unexpected revelation leaves the young woman completely shocked by what she just heard. Our protagonist questions him and asks if he's saying that Cheonkija is still alive. Faced with that completely unexpected news, the scene returns to the moment of their reunion. The two of them continue running nonstop through the forest, hoping to find the escort group. Suddenly, a familiar voice calls out for the young miss, and the young woman turns with a surprised expression. The young woman then shouts for Uncle Hyung Pyo, and the man asks what happened to the young miss. Hyung Pyo can't believe it and asks if the Jo family and the Hanam escort agency are gone. The other porters panic and wonder what will happen to them now, as they need to find work elsewhere. Amidst the confusion, the young woman apologizes for bringing such terrible news during the escort, but Hyung Pyo tells her not to worry, and that she is surely the one suffering the most right now. The escort warrior realizes that the morale, which was already low because of the ambush, has now hit rock bottom with the news, and that it will be very difficult to finish the mission this way. With this, he understands that he needs a clever way to get out of this situation. Thus, he reminds everyone that they still have the large commission for the escort, and that with that money, everyone could start a new life. He adds that they can even rebuild the Hanam escort agency, as they still have the young miss with them. The young woman is moved by Hyung Pyo's words and calls him uncle. With this, she understands that it's not yet time to mourn, as she still has people from the Jo family for whom she is responsible. The young woman then promises that after taking responsibility for them, she will become strong like her brother Hyung-woo and will avenge everyone who is gone. Our protagonist just asks if they need to leave again. With renewed determination, Hyung Pyo shouts for everyone to resume the escort mission immediately. The movement catches the attention of Tang Cheol-jae, who asks if that isn't the daughter of the Jo family, but the elder tells him not to worry and to focus on the mission. Tang Ho-guan thinks about how shocked he was when the porter disappeared, and that as long as he joins the escort, he would even accept a tiger in the group. With that, the entire group starts running again with renewed morale, ready to continue the journey. As she runs, Jo So-yeon remembers what Dan Hyung-woo said about having fought monsters for a long time. The young woman has never heard of such a place and keeps wondering what really happened to him. Thus, she takes the opportunity to ask if can tell her more about what he was saying on the way. The young woman gets straight to the point and questions if Cheonkija is really gone. Our protagonist then confirms that he is and says the story they tell is that he passed away 10 years ago. The young man then laments, as that means he really won't be able to get his revenge. But Hyung Pyo joins the conversation and reveals that, to be honest, he doesn't believe Cheonkija is gone. The revelation leaves the young woman with a shocked expression, while Dan Hyung-woo watches from the background. Our protagonist then questions Hyung Pyo if he really thinks Cheonkija is still alive. The escort warrior explains that there are many suspicious parts about his passing, as rumors usually have a source, but this one has none. He continues, saying it's as if someone shouted the news to the whole world, so that everyone would believe Cheonkija was was gone. With this, the young woman asks who would spread such a rumor, and for what reason. Pio replies that he's not sure, but the most likely reason is that the master wanted to escape the world's attention for some reason. Thus, he concludes that Chiankija himself spread the rumor of his own passing. The young woman is completely shocked by the theory, and can hardly believe the possibility that he spread the news himself. Our protagonist remembers that all this happened 10 years ago. Suddenly, Tang Ho Guan shouts for everyone to stop immediately. The caravan stops and comes across another carriage in the middle of the road, where someone apologizes for causing trouble. The man explains that one of the carriage's wheels broke suddenly. He adds that it seems very difficult to fix, and therefore asks them to escort his lady along with the group. Tang Ho Guan, however, notices from the crest on the carriage that they are from the Umun clan. The elder thinks about the attacks they faced and the possibility that the news about the cargo has leaked, and finds it too much of a coincidence that a Umun clan carriage would overturn right there. Faced with the situation, Elder Tang Ho Guan begins to refuse the request, saying he is very sorry, but they cannot. But before he can finish, a woman gets out of the carriage and introduces herself as Umun Hai, the daughter of the Umun clan's chief. Her appearance leaves Hyang Pio and the other porters completely jaw-dropped by the young woman's beauty. Our protagonist, however, is not impressed at all and thinks all that commotion is a real exaggeration. With an elegant step, Umun Hai descends from her damaged carriage. Right after, she begins to walk toward the escort group with impressive grace. The woman floats through the air as if she were a fairy amidst leaves and a glowing aura. The moment Umun Hai appeared, everyone in the escort group thought of the phrase, "a beauty that could topple kingdoms," and were mesmerized by her. Even Elder Tang Ho Guan, for a brief moment, could do nothing but marvel at her beauty. While everyone was completely distracted, Umun Hai lands gently, as if she were a butterfly. She then climbs onto one of the carts that carried the mission's most important goods. The woman sits on top of the cargo with a very confident and mysterious smile on her face. One of the porters tries to warn that it's not appropriate to let someone ride on the cargo cart, but she replies that it obviously isn't. Our protagonist just watches the whole scene in silence without showing any reaction. With his face all red and stammering, Tang Ho Guan changes his mind and says that since her carriage is broken, they will take her to the next town. Hyang Pio is shocked to realize that even Elder Tang has fallen under her spell. With a charming smile, Umun Hai thanks them and says she is in their care. Hyang Pio gets all flustered and stammers a positive response, showing that he too has fallen for her charm. Tang Ho Guan suggests that she ride in the front cart as it would be more comfortable, but the woman politely refuses and says that since she is receiving help, she will ride on that cargo cart while our protagonist just watches. The elder then thinks that if that porter is guarding the cargo, the goods should be safe. With that, he gives the order for the group to continue the journey. Umun Hai breaks into a very malicious smile, showing her true intentions. She thinks about how lucky it was that the old man agreed so easily and warns her men to communicate only by sound transmission from now on. One of her men confirms and informs her that according to his check, they have only one escort warrior and about 30 porters. With this, the woman concludes that no matter how she looks at it, Elder Tang Ho Guan is the only real master there. Meanwhile, the other porters are completely distracted by the beauty of the newcomer. Umun Hai thinks that with such weak protection, 5 carts full of thunderclap grenades are being transported. The thunderclap grenades were bombs created by the ancient Thunder sect and were said to be capable of wiping entire sects off the map without a trace. With those 2 fire bombs, the power of the Thunder sect grew with each passing day, but ironically, the sect's destruction also came from these same powerful bombs. After that, the Thunder sect disappeared for hundreds of years, and somehow the thunderclap grenades and their formula reappeared in the world. Umun Hai thought they might have used the grenades when the Death Spirit troop was annihilated, but there was no trace of them. Because of this, the mysterious woman wonders who on Earth stopped and wiped out her elite troop. At that moment, her attention turns to an unexpected figure in the group. The young man's clothes clearly say he is a porter, but he walks with a sword and doesn't seem to have learned any martial arts. Even though he seems to have nothing special about him, Umun Hai can't stop noticing that man. Suddenly, the young miss realizes something that leaves her completely shocked. Since she appeared, that porter hasn't looked at her even once, and she wonders how he can see her beauty and still act that way. She finds it impossible for a man to exist in the world who is not interested in Umun Hai, and for that reason, she calls out to the Mr. Porter, Dan Hyang, who only looked because he was the only porter nearby. But at that moment, when she saw the young man's eyes, Umun Hai couldn't help but be shocked, as that gaze was a type of masculine indifference she had never experienced in her life. Faced with the situation, the woman wonders if this is what humiliation feels like, confesses she would like to finish off his head right now. With a sinister smile, she decides that one way or another, she will make Dan Hyung Woo kneel at her feet. With that, Hyung Pai announces that the group will rest at that location for the night, and everyone agrees. The porters then collapse to the ground, completely exhausted after the long journey they've had. Unlike the others, our protagonist moves away a bit and silently observes the dark forest. At that moment, Jo Seol Yan appears holding a bowl of hot soup she prepared herself. The young woman approaches the young man and comments that she finally found him. With a gentle smile, she offers the meat soup to her brother Hyung Woo, while Amunhai watches everything from a distance with a not so friendly expression. Suddenly, the mysterious woman leaps toward the protagonist with impressive speed. She gets very close to him and invites him to follow her into the forest, promising to tell him what he so desperately wants to know. Then, Amunhai pulls away and challenges him to keep up with her if he's good enough. She believes that a porter with a sword must be interested in martial arts and plans to lure him with the techniques of the Umun clan. With a confident smile, the woman hopes that her lightness skill won't completely shatter the wanderer's confidence. She continues moving at high speed, thinking it would be a huge disappointment if he couldn't catch up to her. To her surprise, our protagonist appears right in front of her in the blink of an eye, blocking her path. The young man faces her with a serious look, showing that her speed was nothing special. Amunhai is completely in shock and can hardly believe it, wondering how he got in front of her so quickly. Suddenly, a sharp scream echoes through the dark forest, startling everyone. Upon hearing the noise, one of the men from the Umun clan recognizes the young Mrs. voice and calls for the others to go with him immediately. Jo Seol Yan becomes worried and wonders what happened to her brother Hyung Woo. Our protagonist, however, just maintains his serious and focused gaze on the woman in front of him. Amunhai can't believe that her lightness technique, which is the best in her clan, was surpassed by a simple porter. Completely shocked by the situation, the woman faces him and asks who he really is. The young man replies that his name is Dan Hyung Woo and that he wants Cheonkija's location, asking her to hurry up because his meat soup is getting cold. The woman gets all flustered and stammers that she has no idea where Cheonkija is. Jo Seol Yan, still holding the bowl, is completely confused by the mention of the meat soup. With that, the young man says that if she doesn't know, he's leaving, but the woman shouts for him to wait, as she still has more questions to ask. Suddenly, Umunhai's guards appear and surround Dan Hyung Woo, accusing him of having done something to the young miss. The leader of the guards becomes furious, draws his sword, and threatens the young man, saying he will pay for his audacity with his life. Amunhai, however, desperately shouts for her guard not to draw his sword, as she knows the danger they are in. Our protagonist narrows his eyes and releases a crushing pressure toward the men. With that, all the guards fall to the ground, paralyzed by the young man's aura, unable to even touch their swords. As soon as the pressure vanishes, the guard gets up and is shocked to realize that the protagonist has simply disappeared. Amunhai is also left speechless and realizes that it wasn't a common movement technique. He simply vanished into thin air. With absurd speed, our protagonist returns to the camp in the blink of an eye. His sudden return catches Jo Seol Yan by surprise, who lets out a cry of astonishment. She then notices something even stranger and looks at her hands. The bowl of soup she was holding has simply disappeared. It turns out the young man grabbed the bowl on the way and is now calmly drinking the soup. With that, he turns to the young woman and says it's a good thing the soup didn't get cold, leaving her completely speechless at the situation. The young woman then asks about the woman he had left with, and the young man replies that he doesn't know, and that she'll come back when she wants to. Despite everything, Jo Seol Yan comments with a smile on how beautiful Miss Amun is. Hyung Pyo, who is eating nearby, agrees and says she's beautiful enough to seduce any man, while the young woman agrees, all flustered. A little embarrassed, the young woman turns to the protagonist and asks with curiosity what he thinks of her, and if she is also beautiful. Our protagonist looks at her for a moment and begins to answer with complete sincerity. The young woman waits for the answer with an expression full of expectation. He then says with a slight smile that she is not as beautiful as the other woman, leaving the young woman completely flustered and nodding in agreement. Our protagonist then surprises everyone by saying he doesn't like beautiful women. The young woman is completely confused by the answer and questions him about the reason. With a serious look, the young man explains that the temptation of a beautiful woman brings ruin. Meanwhile, Amunhai, back with her men, states with absolute certainty that the porter is the one they are looking for. One of her guards, however, suggests they observe him for a while longer, as they still know almost nothing about him. The mysterious woman becomes even more obsessed and wonders what kind of man Dan Hyung Woo is. Before they knew it, the journey of the Hanam escort agency was almost at Sichuan. As she runs, the young woman can't stop thinking about what he said yesterday and wonders about the kind of life her brother Hyung Woo lived. Suddenly, Hyung Pyo calls her by name, and the young woman responds promptly. The escort warrior warns her to be careful from now on, as the closer they get to their destination, the stranger the atmosphere becomes. With that, the group picks up the pace amidst the trees, feeling the tension rise with every second. The danger Hyung Pai felt was real, and Tang Ho Guan Guan and Tang Chiel, she felt the threat even more strongly. The elder then reveals that they will arrive at the main house in Sichuan tomorrow, and that the only remaining threat is the Black Serpent Hall. In the last 10 years, the Black Serpent Hall has grown rapidly and has become the only force in Sichuan that can threaten the Tang family. With that, the caravan moves on to the last part of its journey, preparing for the final confrontation that is approaching. Tang Ho Guan can hardly believe it and wonders if there really was an information leak within the Tang family. Right after Zhou Seal, Yan approaches and warns that Haiyang Pio asked him to prepare for a possible ambush, but our protagonist interrupts her and reveals that there are about 100 enemies. The revelation leaves the young woman completely shocked, while Hai, watching from a distance, is also surprised by the young man's accuracy. The mysterious woman can hardly believe that he can know the number of enemies just by their presence and finds it all almost unbelievable. Suddenly, several men start jumping from the trees, initiating the ambush. With that, a huge group of warriors from the Black Serpent Hall charges at the caravan. Our protagonist calmly observes the scene and notes that about 50 enemies came out first. Tang Ho Guan then shouts for Dan Haiyang Wu not to interfere and just protect the cargo, as these small fry from the Black Serpent Hall are no match for them. With that, the elder leaps into the air and charges at the enemies with a purple aura emanating from his body. He shouts confidently that they are more than enough to handle this threat. Haiyang Pio then turns to the protagonist and asks what he thinks of the situation. The young man replies for him not to worry, as the elder's side will win. With that, the battle intensifies, and the members of the Black Serpent Hall are slaughtered without any chance to fight back. Exactly as Dan Haiyang Wu predicted, even with their rapid growth over the last 10 years, the Black Serpent Hall was no match for the elite warriors of the Tang family. Led by Elder Tang Ho Guan, the elite warriors of the Sichuan Tang family show that the enemy's numerical superiority means absolutely nothing. Watching the battle from a distance, some people begin to worry about the outcome. Hai wonders if they underestimated the strength of the Tang family too much. She and her subordinate note that they dealt with 50 men with impressive ease. The man then warns his lady that even if another 50 warriors from the clan ambushed them from another direction, there would be no chance of victory. With this, the mysterious woman concludes that retreating for now is their best option, but she soon realizes a problem and wonders how she will give the retreat order without being noticed. At that moment, our protagonist turns and says that if she is going to tell them, he won't stop her. Her guard is completely shocked by the young man's sudden words and wonders what just happened. He can hardly believe it and questions if the porter was listening to their sound transmission. With a smirk, the protagonist threatens to finish them all off if they don't retreat. A drop of sweat runs down Hai's face as she realizes this is not a bluff. With that, she turns to her guard and gives the order for him to deliver the message. The man confirms the order and runs off at high speed to deliver the retreat order. With a malicious smile, Hai turns to the protagonist and thanks him for saving her warriors' lives, commenting on how impossible he is to read. The woman found it all very strange, but Dan Haiyang Wu had another reason for his actions. The reason the young man acted that way was not the presence of the Yumun clan's ambush, but a very strong killing intent that was getting on his nerves. Meanwhile, the main battle continued, and Tang Ho Guan was already preparing for the next attack. With this, he and his men easily defeated the Black Serpent Hall, leaving all the enemies fallen on the ground. Hidden among the trees, a hooded man observes the scene and notes that the vanguard was completely wiped out, but he soon reveals that the vanguard was just a decoy, and that when they are drunk on victory and sleeping, the real attack will begin. At that moment, the group known as the Red Moon Troop will finally take action. The hooded assassins prepare for the attack, while their leader smiles and thinks that everything is going according to plan. With Dan Haiyang Wu looking the other way, the Umun clan warriors manage to retreat safely, and their leader shouts the order for everyone to withdraw. With that, the 50 men from the ambush manage to escape, but our protagonist notices that the unpleasant killing intent is getting even stronger. Faced with the situation, Tang Ho Guan decides they will sleep at that location for the night. With this, Haiyang Pio approaches the young woman and says that the lady from the Umun clan plans to set up her tent next to the cart and suggests that she stay with the young woman. The young woman, however, refuses and says she can't be the only one to sleep comfortably, leaving the escort warrior unsure of what to say. The young woman then reveals the truth and confesses that she is ashamed to say she never paid much attention to the Hanem escort agency, as the place was always peaceful, and she thought they just did the simple job of carrying goods. She adds that after embarking on this escort, she realized that the agency could only remain peaceful because the escort escort warriors and porters risk their lives to ensure the success of the missions. With this, she decides that as a member of the agency, she will sleep together with everyone else. With a determined look, the young woman informs the warrior that she has made a decision and that she will no longer be the young miss of the Joe family but the new head of the Hanem escort agency. In that instant, the protagonist approaches and the young woman turns to him, surprised. With a smile, the young woman asks if he wanted to say something. The young man then explains that in an escort agency, you start as a porter. The response leaves the young woman and Hyung Pyo completely flustered, and she agrees with a nervous smile. Without losing her determination, she asks her brother to teach her how to become a first-class porter, leaving the escort warrior emotional. With tears in his eyes, Hyung Pyo thinks about how the young miss has grown so much without him noticing. Under the starry sky, night falls on the camp, bringing a temporary calm. The Red Moon Troop is a high-level assassination unit carefully created by the Black Serpent Hall, and their specialty is ambushes and surprise attacks. Furthermore, they are experts in stealth arts. Their stealth is terrifying, as they not only blend into the shadows and hide their presence, but they also move as one, as if they were a single person. This troop is so efficient that it can take out any number of enemies in an instant. Meanwhile, back at the camp, the fire crackles and illuminates the quiet night. Calmness sets in, and all the members of the escort group finally fall asleep, exhausted. Even Elder Tang Ho Guan rests deeply, unaware of the approaching danger. Our protagonist, however, remains standing and covers Jo Seol Yan, who sleeps peacefully on the ground. An aura of energy begins to emanate from him. As the young man senses that the killing intent he felt before is getting closer, hidden in the darkness of the forest, the assassins of the Red Moon Troop observe the camp, waiting for the right moment to strike. The red eye of the squad leader glows in the darkness as he prepares to give the signal. With a focused gaze, he gives the order for all members of the Red Moon Troop to prepare for the imminent attack. With that, a sinister reddish energy envelopes the assassins as they respond in unison and prepare for the assault. The protagonist then turns in the exact direction of the enemies and realizes that was where they were hiding all along. Without wasting a second, he dashes at high speed toward the forest to intercept the threat before it reaches the camp. The leader of the assassins then begins the countdown for his squad's combined attack. But before he can even finish the count, a hand appears out of nowhere and grabs him with absurd force. It turns out Dan Haiyang, who arrived just in time and now holds the leader of the assassins with a freezing glare as a powerful energy explodes around him. With a swift movement, the young man steps on the assassin with tremendous force, driving him into the ground. The man then finishes the count as our protagonist deals with the rest of the squad. With that, all the hooded assassins are defeated and fall to the ground with no chance to react. The true leader of the Black Serpent Hall then emerges and finishes the countdown for the attack. With a determined look, he gives the order for no one to be left alive and for them to start by eliminating the most dangerous target. With that, the man advances toward Tang Ho Guan, who is still sleeping peacefully in the camp. The assassin congratulates him for having brought the thunderclap grenades this far and reveals that in the end, the Black Serpent Hall will be the one to possess the weapons. His sword glows with a powerful reddish energy as he prepares to deliver the final blow, but suddenly, the blade is blocked by another sword that appears out of nowhere to protect the elder. The leader of the assassins is completely shocked and questions why that guard is still alive and what the Red Moon Troop was doing. On the other side of the camp, the porters wake up startled by the commotion and shout for the elder, unable to sense the enemy's presence. The assassin is furious at the unexpected interference and lets out a curse. Our protagonist faces him with a smirk and asks if their name is really the Red Moon Troop. The man can hardly believe it and wonders how the young man managed to hear his sound transmission. With that, the protagonist reveals that there is no more Red Moon Troop, as only he is left, while the bodies of his comrades lie in the background. Blind with rage, the man asks what kind of monster he is. Our protagonist just tells him to go join his comrades as a powerful energy explodes around him. With a single blow, the young man disintegrates the last member of the Red Moon Troop. The man can hardly believe that the plan the Black Serpent Hall paid such a high price to prepare ended so easily. With that, the assassin's body disappears into thin air, leaving no trace behind. The energy explosion wakes up Tang Ho Guan, who gets up startled and asks what's happening, while his nephew warns that the forest is full of assassins' bodies. The young woman also wakes up and asks what happened, and Hyung Pyo explains that the remnants tried one last ambush. She becomes desperate and asks if the porters are all okay. The escort warrior reassures her and says it seems only the enemies perished. He then adds that luckily his friend Hyung Woo acted first and points to the young man standing in the middle of the camp. Our protagonist observes the scene with his serious and focused gaze. Jo Seol Yan thinks with gratitude that her brother has protected her once again. Amunhai, however, thinks that she thought he was merciful, but perhaps he's not so much. With a smirk, the woman concludes that he truly is a man one cannot decipher. With the threat eliminated, the group prepares to leave once more and continue their journey. Thanks to Dan Hyum-woo's help, the escort group escaped danger and continued their journey without any more threats along the way. With this, they finally arrive at their final destination, the city of Chengdu in Sichuan. One of the porters celebrates, saying that as soon as they pass through the streets of Chengdu, the deadly escort will finally be over and that he just wants a drink to pass on happily. Meanwhile, Jo Seol-yeon seems a bit thoughtful and starts talking to Eun-hai. The mysterious woman then turns with a smile and asks what's wrong. The young woman reminds her that she said she needed to go somewhere before they reach Chengdu, but they are already in the city. With a confident smile, Eun-hai replies that she will go when the time comes and tells the young woman not to worry. Jo Seol-yeon then agrees, and the mysterious woman observes her with a very calculating look. Hyung-pyo then approaches and warns the protagonist that when they arrive at the Tang family, he will be very busy, but the young man doesn't get the joke, and the warrior remembers that his friend doesn't understand jokes. With that, he explains that what he meant is that there is a place called the Ake family mansion, not far from the Tang property, and reminds him that his friend's surname was Ake. The revelation makes the protagonist's eyes widen as Hyung-pyo suggests that since his friend was important to him, he might want to visit his family. A memory of his friend Hungwoo flashes in his mind, asking him to survive and tell his father that he is sorry. With a determined smile, our protagonist declares that they are going to the Ake family mansion right now.